Good morning, everyone. Hello, Geeta, Sally, Bradley, and Joe from UK. And hello to everyone I don't see right now. Oh, welcome to Ryan. And hello, Bante Sudaso. Thank you so much for sharing the Dharma with us this morning. So we will be going through the Dhātuvibhaṅga Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 140. And you can find a copy of the sutta on the link posted in the live. And welcome to Ethan and Galaxy from Malaysia. Wonderful. Great to see you all. So yeah, you can click on the link and you can follow along with Bante as he teaches us the sutta this morning.
Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Good morning, friends, or I think that's good evening to our friend in Malaysia. This morning / evening, time is emptiness. We'll be looking at the Dhātuvibhaṅga Sutta. This is number 140 from the Majjhima Nikaya, translated here as Analysis of Elements. As usual, I will read through the sutta and periodically I'll stop to give some explanation. And then at the end we can have some questions. Since this sutta is a bit longer than most of the other ones we've been looking at, the plan is to split it into two. So we'll look at the first half today and the second half tomorrow. The sutta begins. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was traveling in Magadha. He entered Rajagaha, approached the pater Bhagava, and said to him, Bhagava, if it is not a burden for you, I will stay in your foyer for one night. And the pater replies, Bhante, it is not a burden for me. However, there is another renunciant staying here who arrived first. If he permits it, Bhante, you may stay as you wish. So note his name is Bhagava, which is not the same as Bhagava. So Bhagava is the prosperous one, the blessed one, whereas Bhagava is a person's name. So the spelling is somewhat similar, but a completely different meaning. So Bhagava, the blessed one, the prosperous one, Bhagava, the pater's name. Two different words. So the pater is saying that there's already another monk staying in his foyer, but if the other monk permits it, then the Buddha can stay as well. So on that occasion, it was a gentleman named Pukkusāti who had become a homeless renunciate because of faith in the Blessed One, who had arrived first and was staying in the pater's foyer. Then the Blessed One approached Venerable Pukkusāti and said to him, Monk, if it is not a burden for you, I will stay in the foyer for one night. And Venerable Pukkusāti replies, Venerable, the pater's foyer is spacious. The Venerable may stay as he wishes. So this here is interesting in that the Buddha is simply addressing the other guy as bhikkhu, as monk. But the other person, even though he just perceives the Buddha as being a fellow monk, he calls him Venerable. So he calls him a somewhat more polite title. Then the Blessed One entered the pater's foyer and prepared a grass mat. He sat down, crossed his legs, straightened his posture, and established mindfulness as foremost. Then the Blessed One spent most of the night sitting up. Venerable Pukkusāti also spent most of the night sitting up. In other words, they both spent most of the night practicing sitting meditation. The Blessed One thought, this gentleman's behavior is inspiring. Perhaps I will question him. Then the Blessed One said to Venerable Pukkusāti, Monk, because of whom did you become a renunciate? Or who is your teacher? Or whose teachings do you approve of? And Venerable Pukkusāti replies, Venerable, there is the contemplative Gautama, a Sakyan, a renunciant from the Sakya clan. A good report has circulated about him. He is a blessed one, an arhat, a fully self-enlightened one, perfect in knowledge and conduct, sublime, a world knower, an unsurpassed trainer of trainable people, a teacher of celestial and human beings, an awakened one, a blessed one. Because of that blessed one, I became a renunciate. That blessed one is my teacher. I approve of that blessed one's teaching. And the Buddha asks, Monk, where does the blessed one, the arhat, the fully self-enlightened one, now live? And Pukkusāti replies, Venerable, in the northern countries, there's a town named Savatthi. That is where the blessed one, the arhat, the fully self-enlightened one, now lives. And the Buddha asks, Monk, have you seen the blessed one before? If you saw him, would you know it was him? And Pukkusāti replies, No, Venerable, I have not seen the blessed one before. If I saw him, I would not know it was him. So, by the way, this also indicates that the Buddha did not look substantially different from other humans. So in later apocryphal tradition, there came to be this belief that the Buddha was 5 meters tall and had all kinds of bizarre and unusual physical features, which would make him instantly recognizable, besides the fact that he was 3 times as tall as the average human. But there's many cases in the suttas where it's quite clear that the Buddha did not look substantially different from other humans. Because there's many cases where people saw the Buddha but didn't identify him as being any different, or were not able to pick him out of a crowd, or were not able to identify or distinguish him. And in fact, people often, in the suttas, there's some cases where people mistook the Buddha's cousin for being the Buddha, because there was some family resemblance. But of course, the Buddha's cousin wasn't 5 meters tall, and didn't have various bizarre physical characteristics either. There's also a case where the Buddha was sitting with a group of monks, and someone came to see the Buddha and was unable to tell which one was the Buddha. It all just looked like a group of monks to him. So this is another such sutta which indicates that the Buddha looked more or less like a human, enough so that someone could not easily pick the Buddha out of a crowd. And in this case, Venerable Pukkusāti was sitting face to face with the Buddha, spent the night with the Buddha, and just thought it was another monk. Didn't realize that he'd been with the Buddha all night. I also find this highly amusing that the Buddha's asking him questions like, so tell me about this Buddha guy. Where does he live? What's he like? So asking questions as though he's not aware of exactly what's going on. So then the Blessed One thought, this gentleman has become a renunciant because of me. Perhaps I will teach him the Dhamma. Then the Blessed One said to Venerable Pukkusāti, Monk, I will teach you the Dhamma. Listen to this and carefully pay attention. I will speak. Yes, Venerable Pukkusāti replied to the Blessed One. So I also find this really adorable in that the Buddha is speaking in a way which, if it wasn't the Buddha, it would be a little bit pretentious. But Venerable Pukkusāti doesn't seem to be the slightest bit bothered. So it's this humility of, even though he's just met this monk and doesn't know anything about him, Venerable Pukkusāti has the humility to be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll listen to your Dhamma talk. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, teach some Dhamma. Yeah, it's all good. So the Blessed One said this, Monk, this person has 6 elements, 6 sense domains, 18 mental explorations, and 4 resolutions. Standing where one is not flooded by the flow of notions, one is called a peaceful sage. One does not neglect wisdom, one protects truth, one practices renunciation, and one trains for peace. This is the summary of the analysis of elements. This is basically the table of contents for the sutta. So we see this in a number of suttas where somewhere near the beginning, the Buddha will give a brief table of contents for what he's going to talk about in the sutta, and then he'll go through each item one at a time. So that's the case. So each one of these is one of the sections he's going to talk about. So he's going to talk about the 6 elements, the 6 sense domains, the 18 mental explorations, the 4 resolutions. He's going to explain what he means by the statement, standing where one is not flooded by the flow of notions, one is called the peaceful sage. He's going to explain what that means. He's going to explain what it means to not neglect wisdom, to protect truth, to practice renunciation, and to train for peace. So each one of these is a section heading, so a topic that he's going to cover. And here we also see where the name of the sutta comes from, because the Buddha, in fact, says this is the summary of the analysis of elements. So here he says exactly what he's going to talk about. So the first section, he says, monk, this person has 6 elements. This is what was said. What does it refer to? The earth element, the water element, the heat element, the wind element, the space element, and the consciousness element. Monk, this person has 6 elements. This is what was said, and this is what it refers to. So later on in the sutta, he gives some more explanation about what these 6 elements are. So for those who have been tuning into our YouTube live streams for a while, you know that recently we did a series of classes and meditation sessions on the 6 elements. So using the 6 elements in particular as a way of developing the perception of not self. And that comes from many places in the suttas, and this is one particular place where it can be found. So since the Buddha will go into more explanation of this later in the sutta, I won't explain it much here. Then he says, monk, this person has 6 sense domains. This is what was said. What does it refer to? The domain of eye contact, the domain of ear contact, the domain of nose contact, the domain of tongue contact, the domain of body contact, and the domain of mind contact. Monk, this person has 6 sense domains. This is what was said, and this is what it refers to. So briefly speaking, the 6 senses. So eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought. So the 6 sense domains, the 6 areas of experience through which we perceive the world. Then he says, monk, this person has 18 mental explorations. This is what was said. What does it refer to? After seeing a sight with the eye, one explores a sight that is a basis for elation, one explores a sight that is a basis for depression, and one explores a sight that is a basis for equanimity. After hearing a sound with the ear, odor with the nose, flavor with the tongue, tangible object with the body, or mental object with the mind, so going through each of the 6 sense domains in this way, one explores an object that is a basis for elation, an object that is a basis for depression, an object that is a basis for equanimity. In this way, there are 6 explorations of elation, 6 explorations of depression, and 6 explorations of equanimity. Monk, this person has 18 mental explorations. This is what was said, and this is what it refers to. So this is referring to the experience that we have when seeing anything or hearing anything or smelling anything, tasting anything, touching anything, or cognizing anything. If something is a basis for elation, in other words, if it makes us happy, we like it, we enjoy it, it brings pleasure, then we explore it. We launch out at it. We get wrapped up in it. We get caught in it. Similarly, if something is a basis for depression, so it's something that we dislike. It makes us sad or unhappy or angry or disturbed or uncomfortable in some way. Then again, we launch out at it. In this case, exploring the unhappiness and displeasure that it brings, obsessing about the discomfort that it's causing us, fixating on our dislike of it, our distaste for it. And exploring a sight that's a basis for equanimity. Sometimes we experience things which are not painful or pleasant, which don't provoke a response of liking or disliking. So often our experience there is that we find it confusing or befuddling. We don't understand it, or we're ignorant to it. We're not paying attention to it. We don't quite get it. So there also we get obsessed and wrapped up with it in the sense that we're confused by it. We don't understand what's going on. So these are the 18 ways that we get entangled with the sensory world. The 18 ways that we get trapped in the sensory world. So rather than just watching these things coming and going as impermanent and impersonal, instead we get wrapped up in things that we like and things that we don't like and things that we're confused about or that we don't feel strongly about. So we're always getting wrapped up in the world, wrapped up in our sense domains. So with Buddhist practice, we're trying to break those habits of always getting involved in and wrapped up in the sensory domain that we're experiencing. Then he says, monk, this person has 4 resolutions. This is what was said. What does it refer to? The resolution of wisdom, the resolution of truth, the resolution of renunciation, and the resolution of peace. Monk, this person has 4 resolutions. This is what was said, and this is what it refers to. So resolution here is aditthana. So aditthana has 2 main meanings. One is negative and one is positive. So the negative meaning of aditthana is being stuck on something, like obstinate adherence to something. This like stubborn unwillingness to budge from a viewpoint or an opinion. So that's one use of the word aditthana. The other use of the word aditthana is making a resolution. So resolving to be committed to something, determining to be committed to something. So kind of like a New Year's resolution, you commit to whatever it is you want to commit to for the year. So similarly here, it's making that resolution of being committed to wisdom, to truth, to renunciation, and to peace. So those are the 4 resolutions. Then the Buddha says, one does not neglect wisdom, one protects truth, one practices renunciation, and one trains for peace. This is what was said. What does it refer to? Those who are paying attention, by the way, will notice that the Buddha skipped something. He skipped the part about standing where one is not flooded by the flow of notions. One is called the peaceful sage. He skipped that, but we'll get back to that later. So first off, taking this statement, one does not neglect wisdom, one protects truth, one practices renunciation, one trains for peace. This is what was said. What does it refer to? So now the Buddha is going to go into some more explanation, a little more in-depth explanation about what he's talking about here. Starting with the 6 elements. He says, monk, how does one not neglect wisdom? Monk, these are the 6 elements. The earth element, the water element, the heat element, the wind element, the space element, and the consciousness element. Monk, what is the earth element? The earth element can be internal and it can be external. In other words, it can be in your body or outside of your body. Monk, what is the internal earth element? Any internal component that is firm, solid, and an object of attachment, such as head hair. Anybody here attached to their head hair? I see one person, a resident at our monastery, who recently I suggested to shave her head for her, and she became very distraught. So I think there's some attachment to head hair with that one. So any internal component that is firm, solid, and an object of attachment, such as head hair, body hair, nails, teeth. A lot of people also obsessed with their nails, their teeth, their skin. Yep. Muscles, tendons, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, membranes, spleen, lungs, bowels, intestine, stomach, and excrement. or any other internal component that is firm, solid, and an object of attachment. Monks, this is called the internal earth element. So these are the earth-like aspects of our body, the earth-like aspects of our experience, the things which seem to be relatively firm and solid, and which we're prone to attaching to. We're prone to grasping at, clinging at, trying to hold on to these aspects of our experience. So this is called the internal earth element, the earth-like aspects of our experience. And the Buddha says the internal earth element and the external earth element are exactly the same earth element. So again, this is the instruction that we were using as the meditation practice when we were doing the meditation on 6 elements. So to recognize that the earthy solid matter of your body is exactly the same as the earthy solid matter of the cushion you're sitting on, of the floor beneath you, the walls around you, the building you're in. It's exactly the same as the solid matter that makes up the trees and the stones and the dirt and everything in the universe, actually. It's all exactly the same solid matter. It's all exactly the same stuff. So this is what the Buddha means when he says the internal earth element and the external element are exactly the same earth element. So what are we doing? We eat food, which means we're putting more earth element into the body, and we're constantly shedding bits of earth element from the body. So there's just this constant exchange of earth element moving around, but it's all just exactly the same earth element. So the Buddha says, it is to be seen accurately with correct wisdom in this way. That is not mine. That is not me. That is not myself. Seeing it accurately with correct wisdom in this way, one becomes disenchanted with the earth element, and the mind becomes dispassionate regarding the earth element. So here, again, as we did in the meditation practice a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, I forget when exactly it was, a little while ago, we are then practicing to see the earth element as not me, not mine, not myself. So just as when we look outside and we see the dirt and the stones and the trees, we know that's not me, that's not mine, that's not who I am. And when we look at the carpet and the walls, then we know, well, that's not me. Well, we should be doing exactly the same thing towards the earth element of our body. So seeing head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, muscles, tendons, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, membrane, spleen, lungs, bowels, intestines, stomach, and excrement, and any other solid earthy aspects of our body, we should be seeing all of it as not me, not mine, not who I am. Because it's no different than all the other earth elements. It's no different from the earth element that makes up the carpet and the walls and the trees and the stones and all that. So in this way, one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and dispassionate regarding the earth element. In other words, we stop attaching to it. We stop obsessing about it. We lose our lust for the earth element. Then he says, monk, what is the water element? The water element can be internal and it can be external. Monk, what is the internal water element? Any internal component that is liquid, fluid, and an object of attachment, such as bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, saliva, mucus, oil, and urine. Or any other internal component that is liquid, fluid, and an object of attachment. Monk, this is called the internal water element. The internal water element and the external water element are exactly the same water element. It is to be seen accurately with correct wisdom in this way. That is not mine, that is not me, that is not myself. Seeing it accurately with correct wisdom in this way, one becomes disenchanted with the water element, and the mind becomes dispassionate regarding the water element. So this is applying the same practice to the liquid aspect of the body. So recognizing that the liquid aspects of the bodily experience, those liquid elements of the body are exactly the same as the liquid elements of the outside world. It's all exactly the same liquid. It's all exactly the same water element. So all of it then is to be seen as not me, not mine, not who I am. Whether in the body or outside the body makes no difference. It's just water element, and it's not me, not mine, not who I am. So we're to see it correctly in this way and drop our attachment and obsession with the water element. Drop our obsession and attachment with the fluid aspect of our experience. And to cultivate dispassion, to let go of our lust and craving and attachment towards the water element. Then the Buddha says, monk, what is the heat element? The heat element can be internal and it can be external. Monk, what is the internal heat element? So I'm just thinking of Venerable Pukkusāti right now. So Pukkusāti thought he was just like quietly meditating with this kind of rude monk who showed up in the middle of the night. But now he's like sitting there like spellbound and dumbfounded as this monk is like laying out this incredibly profound teaching. So just a little snap back to the narrative there. So just imagine Venerable Pukkusāti in the Potter's Foyer listening to this amazing teaching from a monk who initially seemed a little bit less than polite. So, monk, what is the heat element? The heat element can be internal and it can be external. Monk, what is the internal heat element? Any internal component that is hot, heating, and an object of attachment. That which warms the body, ages the body, destroys the body, and digests food and drink, or any other internal component that is hot, heating, and an object of attachment. Monk, this is called the internal heat element. The internal heat element and the external heat element are exactly the same heat element. It is to be seen accurately with correct wisdom in this way. That is not mine, that is not me, that is not myself. Seeing it accurately with correct wisdom in this way, one becomes disenchanted with the heat element, and the mind becomes dispassionate regarding the heat element. So similarly, feeling the heat of the body, so that's both the body warmth, so that which warms the body, ages the body, destroys the body, and also the digestive process. So you can feel this after you eat food. You can feel this warmth, this heat in your belly as the digestive process goes. So feeling the warmth of the body, the heat of the body, and recognizing that it's exactly the same as the heat of the outside world. There's no difference, there's no distinction, there's no separation. And all of it is to be seen as not me, not mine, and not who I am. Then the Buddha continues, monk, what is the wind element? The wind element can be internal and it can be external. Monk, what is the internal wind element? Any internal component that is wind, windy, and an object of attachment. Winds going up, winds going down, winds in the stomach, winds in the abdomen, winds in the limbs, inhalation and exhalation, or any other internal component that is wind, windy, and an object of attachment. Monks, this is called the internal wind element. The internal wind element and the external wind element are exactly the same wind element. It is to be seen accurately with correct wisdom in this way. That is not mine, that is not me, that is not myself. Seeing it accurately with correct wisdom in this way, one becomes disenchanted with the wind element, and the mind becomes dispassionate regarding the wind element. So the wind element, it's also sometimes translated as the air element, which is reasonable enough. So the word vaya does literally mean wind, from the verb vaya, which means to go, to move. And here the Buddha, he's talking about winds moving through the body. So winds going up, winds going down, winds in the stomach, winds in the abdomen, winds in the limbs, inhaling and exhaling. So all this experience of wind moving through the body, of air coursing through the body. And recognizing that it's exactly the same as the air in the rest of the world. So you can really feel this, especially with breathing. With breathing, you can feel that the air element in the body, the wind element in the body, is inseparable from the air element of the outside world. There's no inside and no outside. It's just air. It's just wind. So we let go of this idea of me and mine, of me and my wind, my air that is me. And instead we just see it all as air element, not me, not mine, not who I am. Then he says, monk, what is the space element? The space element can be internal and it can be external. Monks, what is the internal space element? Any internal component that is spacious, and an object of attachment. Inside the ears, inside the nose, the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the bowels, or any other internal component that is spacious, and an object of attachment. Monk, this is called the internal space element. The internal space element and the external space element are exactly the same space element. It is to be seen accurately with correct wisdom in this way. That is not mine, that is not me, that is not myself. Seeing it accurately with correct wisdom in this way, one becomes disenchanted with the space element, and the mind becomes dispassionate regarding the space element. So getting in touch with the experience of space, of empty space. So he gives some examples of the hollow parts of the body. So bringing attention to the hollow parts of the body so that we can start to get some sense as to what the space element feels like. So the instruction I usually give is to bring awareness to the space occupied by the body. But either way, we're trying to get in touch with the space element, the experience of empty space, which is all pervasive. So it fills the whole universe, or rather the whole universe fills empty space. So therefore it's not me and it's not mine. It's just an aspect of the natural world. It's just a function of the natural world. So then the Buddha says, then what remains is consciousness, completely pure and clean. What is cognized by that consciousness? Pleasant is cognized, unpleasant is cognized, neutral is cognized. So this is a somewhat unusual explanation of consciousness. So normally the Buddha defines consciousness in most commonly in terms of awareness of the six senses. Less commonly, he uses consciousness in a more primal sense of awareness, which is not directly related to the six elements. But here, quite unusually, he's just defining consciousness as that which is aware of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So this is not the usual way he defines the word consciousness. But so that's particularly noteworthy here. He also doesn't go into much description of it. So with the other five elements, he gives a fairly detailed description of what the element is and how to observe it internally and externally and how to regard it as not me, not mine, and not myself. But for consciousness, he doesn't actually go into that. So at this point, maybe we should go ahead and switch to questions and finish the sutta tomorrow. Sound good? So I think at this point, since we've gone through the six elements, at this point we'll go ahead and switch to questions.
Right, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And lots of excitement about the sutta. Welcome to Jeannie, hello, and Liz, both in Rockaway. Awesome. Hello, Diane, Yanni. Yanni is also in Queens, not in Rockaway, but in Queens. Hello, Tin, Ella from Poland. Edward, Richard from next door. Jayesh, Marielle, Stacy, Peng, Rupa. Welcome to all of you. So, Rupa, Ryan says, the Buddha is just so great. Yes, it's true.
It's true. Yeah, I agree.
Sally says, Venerable Pukkusāti considered Buddha as his teacher. Why Venerable Pukkusāti haven't gone to see and pay respect to the Buddha yet? If I was born during the Buddha's time, I will try all my best to go and pay respect and learn from the Buddha.
Yeah, that's a good question. Keep in mind this was ancient India, where travel was difficult and dangerous. So traveling any distance, you had to, generally speaking, most people would go on foot. So you would be going on foot through lawless areas filled with bandits and thieves and murderers. It was quite dangerous. You had to bring provisions for the journey, which as a monk was not particularly convenient. It was quite unreliable and unsafe to travel long distances unless you went with a caravan as part of an established route. Northern India, well, it's actually still apparently pretty dangerous even these days, but it was extremely dangerous in the time of the Buddha. So yeah, people didn't travel very much. It wasn't safe to travel much. And traveling on foot over long distances, well, people weren't necessarily up for that. So walking 15 or 20 miles a day for weeks, that's a bit more than most people these days are capable of. So it's actually not terribly surprising. We also don't know how long Venerable Pukkusāti has been a monk, possibly not that long. It's also possible that he had a good teacher and felt like he was getting enough teachings from his good teacher. But also, to some extent, this might also indicate the tendency to take things for granted. Venerable Pukkusāti might have also had that thought of like, the Buddha will be around forever. I'll just go and see him in a few years. There's no hurry. Because of course, we think I would go immediately to see the Buddha, but that's because we don't have access to the Buddha. But if you have this feeling of like, I can go whenever I want, then it's like, well, maybe I'll go next month or next year. There's no hurry. I'll get around to it. In the meantime, I'm just going to sit here and meditate in this potter's foyer. It's kind of nice. I'll go and see the Buddha next year, maybe. So it's I can actually totally understand Venerable Pukkusāti's perspective. There's a lot of reasons why he might have not gone to see the Buddha yet. The other thing is that the Buddha had a tendency to wander around. So even if you went to Savatthi, that doesn't mean that you'd be guaranteed to see him. So for example, Pukkusāti thought the Buddha was at Savatthi when actually the Buddha was not at Savatthi. The Buddha was in Magadha in the same village. So imagine that also. So you go through this long, difficult, dangerous journey, wandering on foot for weeks to Savatthi to see the Buddha, and then you get there and he's not there. Anyway, so I'm actually not terribly surprised that Venerable Pukkusāti had not gone to see the Buddha yet.
Rupa says that the story, as I know, is he is on his way to meet the Buddha, and he stops at a place to rest for the night, and the Buddha meets up with him there, as he won't make it to meet the Buddha otherwise due to his ending being near.
That's quite possible. So it doesn't explicitly say that in the sutta, but that might be the case. So we don't know for sure. It doesn't specifically say anywhere in the sutta that Venerable Pukkusāti was on his way to see the Buddha, but it's quite possible. Yeah.
And Marielle is sharing, it is quite liberating to shave the head hair. I did it once to experience what it feels like. Right now, the plan is to let it grow like really long and then in 3 years, just shave it out of nowhere. It was particularly interesting to feel air and water in the scalp. It was like a new world. Also, winter was a new world. It's true. Yeah, that's my experience as well.
Yeah, it also makes life a lot easier. So when I was a teenager, I used to have long hair and it was beautiful and I loved it. But it was also a hassle. This is so easy. I can do my own haircuts. So every few days, I just take a razor and very convenient, very easy. Feels very clean, nice and simple.
Yeah, very pandemic friendly. You know, all the people who are having problems now, they can't access the
can't get haircuts.
Yeah.
everybody can do their own haircut. It's really easy. Yeah. So May, your hair is getting a little long. We can get out the hair clippers. We'll take care of it very quickly.
I do my hair.
Oh, okay.
She does her own hair. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna win that, Pante. And Joe says, what about women shaving their legs? How does that work in light of the earth element discourse, not the earth element discourse? I'm confused. Should we or shouldn't we?
I mean, do as you wish. I mean, if I mean, I don't shave my legs personally, and I've never shaved my legs personally. I never quite understood the whole leg shaving thing, to be honest. It's a cultural thing as far as I can tell. I don't know where exactly it came from either. If you like shaving your legs, I guess you can, and it just seems kind of pointless to me. Also, it seems to fit in the category of vanity and beautification, which, I mean, if you're a layperson and you're a sensualist and all that, then I guess that's fine. To the extent that sensualist attachment is actually never fine, but it's understandable. But as a monastic, it's definitely completely ridiculous to shave your legs. That would just be, it's just vanity. It doesn't serve any useful function as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I know quite a number of female monastics, and I don't think any of them shave their legs. And that would just be weird.
All right. Yeah, someone asked me actually recently if I was doing the French thing of not shaving. Apparently, French women
don't shave their legs.
Yeah, okay. Or armpits.
Okay.
Sally, what is the difference between equanimity and confused? Quote, and one explores a mental object that is a basis for equanimity. I thought equanimity has positive meaning, but confused, it is negative. Also, I don't understand Bhakti's words we should not be involved in, including elation, depression, equanimity. Why equanimity is a kind of involving? I thought that's not caring, not paying attention.
So the Buddha says things which are a basis for equanimity. In other words, it's something which could be something which produces equanimity. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we will experience equanimity. Rather, he seems to be using that as a way of indicating neutral sensation. Things which don't provoke desire or aversion. So then if we're clearly aware of it, then instead we'll experience equanimity. So that would be a wholesome thing. So what I was saying is that usually when we experience neutral sensations, then usually we get confused, or we just don't pay any attention, or we cultivate ignorance. So that's the unwholesome side. The wholesome side is with mindfulness and clear awareness, then neutral sensation is a basis for equanimity. Okay.
And just following up on the hair thing, she says, I just am confused why one body part hair is removed, but not the other. So head hair is okay to shave, yes, but leg hair shaving is vanity?
Well, I mean, once again, if you're a layperson, you can shave or not shave whatever parts of your body you want to shave or not shave. That's really up to you to decide what to do and why to do it. As monastics, we shave our heads for a number of reasons. The most simple reason is because it's required. Part of the monastic rules is that we shave our heads. But also because it's a sign that we're not part of the social hierarchy. So especially in the Buddha's time, nobody had shaved heads. It was unthinkable. So the only people that shaved their heads were some monks, but not all. So Buddhist monks shaved their heads, but many monks of other traditions did not shave their heads. But Buddhist monks shaved their heads. And criminals. If somebody committed a serious crime, then part of their punishment would often be that their hair would be shaved off. And that was seen as something very shameful. to have your hair removed. So in the Buddha's time, everybody had long hair, male and female alike. Everybody had long hair. So to deliberately shave your head was a very powerful statement. A bit like somebody having a mohawk. Like, it's a really powerful statement. It's not like these days where people shave their heads just because they feel like it and it's a fashion thing. In the time of the Buddha, it was a very powerful statement saying, like, I am not a member of society anymore. It was a very strong statement to shave your head. Then it's an outward demonstration of non-attachment. So one of the other ways that people would demonstrate non-attachment through their hair was that they would not comb or wash it at all, and they just let it turn into this tangled, knotty mass. So those were some of the other monks at the time of the Buddha would do that practice of just letting their hair become this tangled thorn bush, which also was a practice of demonstrating non-attachment regarding their hair. So that's why we shave our heads. So it's not a vanity thing if you're a monk. If you're not a monk, it might be. If you're a monk, it's not a vanity thing. But yeah, if you want to shave your legs, it's fine. Go ahead. It's not the end of the world. But you might ask yourself why you're shaving your legs. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad, but rather ask yourself, why are you doing it? Are you just doing it because you think you're supposed to? Well, that's interesting. Or is there some other reason? Well, just know what the reason is. Understand why you're doing what you're doing. This is the development of wisdom, understanding why we do what we do. But either way, yeah, recognize that hair is not me, hair is not mine, hair is not who I am. Skin is not me, skin is not mine, skin is not who I am. Teeth are not me, teeth are not mine, teeth are not who I am, and so on. It's just earth element. Okay?
Marielle says, I feel any question might be just asking for spoilers. I need to wait until the end before making real questions. I love how diligent you are. Rupa says, the space in the nostrils seems to help with understanding the space element within the body.
Yeah, so some people find these instructions, it's like the space in the ear holes and the nostrils and so on. Some people find that very helpful in getting in touch with the space element. Yeah, whatever works. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, there are, but there's some follow-ups on the hair issue. So Rupa says, so monks do shave the eyebrows too. Some do, not all. Depends on the tradition. And Marielle says, it is still a strong statement for females at least, especially in certain cultural circles. And Bradley says, female monks shaving their heads, wearing one outfit for years, etc., is still a powerful statement.
Yeah, it's true.
For male monks, it's still a bit strange, but I think people react more powerfully to women bucking the norm. Yep, I can attest to that. It's also very interesting and actually also very freeing. Catcalling stops almost entirely overnight. It's lovely as a female monastic. It's great. And Joe says, I don't shave my legs.
Okay.
But scrolling back up, Raymond says, is it useful to think of the other side of the coin of none of this is myself, and also think that we're all one big universal organism? Everything is not myself, but at the same time, all is me. Hope that makes sense. Like one with the earth.
All
kind
is
of thing.
not you.
Oh.
So elsewhere in the suttas, the Buddha says there's two basic viewpoints: the viewpoint that everything is one, and the viewpoint that everything is pluralistic, like that there's a bunch of separate things. And he clearly states that both viewpoints are wrong. So it's not true to say that everything is one. It's not true to say all is one. That's still only a tiny, just one piece of the truth, but it's not a complete statement. So yeah, it's quite dangerous to start thinking in that way, because then that just fuels another form of self-identity, of thinking everything is me, the whole universe is me, I am the whole universe. That's just building up the sense of me, the sense of self-identity. So I don't recommend it, and it's not something that the Buddha ever recommended.
And Bradley says, does the term bhikkhu only refer to monks in the Buddha's Sangha, or was it used for any renunciate?
Only to Buddhist monks. So bhikkhu only means Buddhist monk. It wasn't used for others.
And Sally says, Buddha described my body problem. I felt wind element disorder inside the body, when it's going up, when it's in the stomach. I don't see Western medicine describe it and diagnose reason like this. Now I understand the problem is just elements disorder, so I feel released from it. But the aversion is still there because I'm afraid it's getting worse and will impact my practice in the future. Any suggestions?
Well, I'm not a doctor. So my advice would be to go to a doctor who understands wind disorders, and talk to them about it. The Buddhist perspective is just to be aware of it is just being an aspect of the natural world. So just as we're not disturbed by the wind blowing through the mountains, the wind blowing through the trees, well, don't be disturbed by the wind blowing through your body. It's just the natural world doing what the natural world does. So we don't need to be bothered by it. Okay.
And even though Marielle says to ignore it, I I just saw it. She made another comment of what she discovered after she shaved her head. I was actually able to find out I have a beautiful scalp form.
That's not the point to shave your head, by the way. Discovering the beauty of your scalp, even though I also have a beautiful scalp, there's no denying it. But that's not the point, of course.
What about mine? Oh.
So May says that Ayasoma has a more beautiful scalp than I do.
Sadhu. And Liz says, thank you, Bhante. Riveting thus far. Why do you think the Buddha chose not to reveal his identity? In what way could that affect the listener's reception of the teaching?
That's a good question. I'm actually not sure why the Buddha chose to remain anonymous while giving this instruction. I think he wanted to test Pukkusāti. I think he wanted to check to see how Pukkusāti would handle the teachings if he didn't know who was speaking. But I'm not sure. He doesn't say. And it's unusual. Normally, the Buddha is very open about his identity. This is one of the very few places where he doesn't reveal his identity, and he allows people to think that he's not the Buddha. So it's quite unusual. And I'm not sure exactly why.
And Sally says, I thought the Buddha has the power to look different in different occasions. I remember the story that a boy is going to die and Buddha walked past in front of him with shining bright. Then the boy was reborn as a deva.
And I've never heard that story. It might be true. I just haven't heard it. It's not from the suttas. It's probably from somewhere else. So, of course, the Buddha had all kinds of powers and abilities. He could make himself look like anything he wanted to. But generally speaking, he didn't. Generally speaking, he just allowed his physical appearance to be what it is, which is just the appearance of an ordinary human being. Yeah, of course, the Buddha had the ability to make his body do other things. He just usually didn't use that ability.
All right. And Sally is asking, so if I ignore, Maria is asking, so we are not a drop of water that will someday come back to the ocean? I mean, is this at least partially true?
There is no water, there is no ocean, there are no drops. So there's this thing which you sometimes hear in non-Buddhist spiritual circles of Actually, one of the briefest summaries of it is from an old heavy metal song that I liked when I was a teenager. Life is a waterfall. We're one in the river and one again after the fall. So it's this basic idea that before we were born, we were part of this vast universal consciousness. And now we're briefly having an experience of being a separate individual. And then after we die, we're just going to merge back into that infinite universal consciousness. So this is a belief that you find in some spiritual systems, but it's not a particularly Buddhist belief. It's not, no. Yeah, so the Buddhist viewpoint is that there never were beings in the first place, but rather there is the illusion of beings. There's the illusion of separate beings, which is the product of ignorance. It's the product of delusion. So we seem to be having the experience of separate beings, but there never were separate beings in the first place. You can't quite say that beings exist, but you also can't quite say that they don't exist, because clearly there's something here. Something's happening. So this is getting into fairly nuanced territory. It's talking about the nature of emptiness and how emptiness relates to not self. But yeah, this whole life is a waterfall, one in the river, one again after the fall, that's not Buddhist. It's not. Yeah. It's very pretty though, it's very cute. I almost wish it was that way because it's very cute and special and it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, but it's not accurate. Yeah, Ayasoma doesn't like it. She's her facial expressions of disgust are quite obvious. I think anyone within 100 miles could recognize it.
It doesn't do much to my psychic. And Sally says, so if I ignore the current conditions and the way to do properly is also unwholesome too. Let's say it's housework, which I don't have passion for, kind of equanimity. My mind not paying clear, broad attention and just want to finish them is a kind of ignorance.
Yeah. Actually, that sounds like aversion. That sounds like a subtle aversion. And usually that's the case, actually. So when we're not paying attention to neutral sensation, there's a subtle aversion there of like, well, I don't want to pay attention to this because it's boring. It's not interesting. Or sometimes it's coming from greed. Like we want something more pleasant. So we daydream or we space out because we think that's more pleasant. So yeah, the practice is to pay full, clear attention to whatever you're doing, to be fully engaged with it. And when you do that, then you're not bored. And whatever you're doing becomes fascinating. And when it's fascinating, then it's enjoyable. Yeah, so even when you're doing housework, try to do it with complete presence of mind, with complete alertness, with enthusiasm, with interest. And not thinking about what you're going to do next, not thinking about what you can do when you're done, not thinking even about finishing the work, but just focusing on doing the work with sincerity and diligence and completeness. Then it becomes an enjoyable activity and it will strengthen your wisdom as well as your samadhi. Housework is great. It's a really great support to one's practice. If we do it with the right attitude, it's a very powerful support to one's practice. So this is why in Zen monasteries, traditionally, they spend a lot of their time just cleaning. They often spend more time cleaning than they do doing formal meditation. There's one monk I know who stayed at a Zen monastery in Japan, and he was actually really frustrated the first few days because the work assignment they gave him was to clean the guest bathroom, the bathroom in the guest quarters, but there were no guests at the monastery. So every day he had to go in there and scrub the whole bathroom top to bottom, make it absolutely sparkling clean, and then nobody would use it for 24 hours. And then the next day he would have to go in and clean it all over again. And at first he was really frustrated. He was like, what is this? Why do they assign me to clean the same bathroom over and over again? It's already clean. But then after a few days, he started to realize that it wasn't really about cleaning the bathroom, but rather it was about using the activity of cleaning the bathroom as a support for his practice. So bringing that attitude into our housework, seeing it as an opportunity to cultivate the mental qualities of our practice. Okay? Anything else?
Yeah, I think this is Melissa. I don't remember the name behind the nickname. They say, thank you for this Dharma talk. It's interesting that Buddha defines the 6 elements as objects of attachment and also emphasizes in consciousness definition that which is cognized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. His terminology seems to point to the elements as reifications, conceptually designated and separate. In other words, is an element if it is not an object of attachment?
So I was actually with you up until your last statement, because yeah, it's still an element even if it's not an object of attachment. So what I get here, when he says object of attachment, he's saying something which we tend to have attachment towards. So it's not that the element is inherently attachment, but rather we have a tendency to become attached to it. That's how I would interpret it anyway. So the earth element is still the earth element, whether there's attachment to it or not. But we tend to be attached to the earth element, to our hair, to our teeth, to our skin, to our bones, to our muscles, and so on. And water element is not inherently attachment, but we tend to be attached to water element, and so on. That's my understanding of that. Okay.
And Ethan said, was that System of a Down?
Yes, actually. Wow, good catch. Yes.
And Sally says, the above question, I always thought ignorance mainly refers to not knowing anicca, dukkha, anatta. Ignorance also includes the worldly issues?
So ignorance in a Buddhist context means a lack of spiritual understanding. So ignorance of the Four Noble Truths is one element of that. In fact, that's one of the more common definitions of ignorance. Another common definition is not recognizing the 4 characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta. It's another definition of ignorance. And of course, these are inseparable. The two are directly related. But yeah, avijja, what we usually translate as ignorance, avijja, it doesn't have anything to do with worldly knowledge. So in the context of experience, well, also if we're not paying attention to what we're experiencing, then we're cultivating ignorance in the sense that we don't understand what's happening. And we don't understand, therefore, how we're creating our dukkha. So if we're not paying attention to our experience, then we don't understand the dukkha that's arising from that experience, which means we can't break through it. And we can't change the underlying patterns. Okay.
All right, and there's that excitement about the Zen story. Maria shares that she read a book about that so she read about that in a book. That bathrooms in Zen monasteries are always looking sharp clean, and that the toilet reflects the state of the mind of the person in it. Pretty great.
Yeah.
Brian says, that just underlines that I need to clean my apartment. Ajahn Chah would scold me for its condition.
Yeah, Ajahn Chah gave a very famous talk called Toilets on the Path, which was all about him scolding the monks for not keeping the toilets clean enough.
And Sally says, I will do my housework with enthusiasm starting from today. What a lovely bathroom.
Great.
Little cutie emoji.
Great.
Toilet on the path to awakening. And Raymond says, I can't imagine Bhante listening to System of a Down.
Well, that's because Bhante doesn't listen to System of a Down, and Bhante has never listened to System of a Down. But pre-Bhante, who was this dorky little punk teenager 20 years ago, he did listen to System of a Down.
All right. Well, I think that's all for this morning. And there will be the second part of the sutta tomorrow. So we can share more reflections then. But in the meanwhile, we will be meeting again at 7:30 p.m. this evening for chanting, meditation, and Dharma sharing. So
led by Ayasoma. Make
yeah.
sure to tune in for that. She can talk about leg shaving or not leg shaving or whatever it is.
All right. Well, look forward to seeing you soon. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a great